They started as a small village on 7 hills beside a river in central Italy. They ended as the masters of the known world. For over 1,000 years, the Roman Empire dominated everything it touched. It conquered Britain in the north, Egypt in the south, Mesopotamia in the east, and Spain in the west. It built roads that still exist today. It created laws that still govern modern nations. It spread a religion that still shapes 2 billion lives. Rome was not just an empire. It was the foundation of Western civilization itself. This is the complete story of Rome. From a village of shepherds to the greatest empire in human history. According to Roman legend, the city was founded in 753 BC by twin brothers named Romulus and Remus. Raised by a wolf after being abandoned as infants, Romulus killed his brother in a dispute over who would rule and became Rome's first king. Whether or not this legend is literally true, archaeology confirms that settlements on the 7 hills of Rome date to this period. Rome was governed by 7 kings over its first 2.5 centuries. The last king was so tyrannical and cruel that the Roman people rose up and threw him out in 509 BC. They replaced monarchy with something revolutionary, a republic governed by elected officials and a senate. The Roman Republic was a remarkable system of government for its time. 2 consuls were elected annually to share executive power, preventing any single person from becoming too powerful. The Senate advised them and controlled finances. It was imperfect, dominated by wealthy aristocrats, and constantly threatened by class conflict between rich patricians and poor plebeians. But it worked well enough to allow Rome to expand aggressively. Over the next 3 centuries, Rome conquered the entire Italian peninsula through a combination of brilliant military strategy and generous terms for defeated enemies. By 264 BC, Rome controlled all of Italy and was ready to challenge the other great powers of the Mediterranean world. Rome's greatest test came from Carthage, a powerful North African empire that controlled the western Mediterranean. Their general, Hannibal Barca, crossed the Alps with elephants and invaded Italy from the north in 218 BC. He won battle after devastating battle. At Cannae in 216 BC, he killed approximately 70,000 Roman soldiers in a single afternoon, the worst defeat in Roman history. Rome seemed finished, but it refused to surrender. It raised new armies, changed its strategy, and fought back. General Scipio Africanus took the war to Africa itself. Hannibal was recalled to defend Carthage and was defeated at the Battle of Zama in 2002 BC. Rome had survived its greatest crisis. By the 1st century BC, Rome controlled the entire Mediterranean world, but success created problems. Wealthy generals commanded personal armies. Political violence erupted in the streets. The Republic was tearing itself apart. Into this chaos stepped Julius Caesar, perhaps the most brilliant and ambitious man Rome ever produced. He conquered Gaul, modern France, adding enormous territory and wealth. He crossed the Rubicon River with his army in 49 BC, an act of open war against the Senate. He defeated his rivals and made himself dictator. He was assassinated by senators on the Ides of March, 44 BC, stabbed 23 times by men who called themselves his friends. Rome would never be a republic again. Caesar's death triggered another round of devastating civil wars. His adopted son Octavian eventually defeated all rivals, including the famous Mark Antony and Cleopatra of Egypt. In 27 BC, Octavian became Augustus, Rome's first emperor, though he was careful never to use that word. He called himself first citizen. He maintained the forms of the republic while holding all real power himself. Under Augustus, Rome entered the Pax Romana, 2 centuries of relative peace and prosperity across the empire. Roads were built, trade flourished, cities grew magnificent. The population thrived. Art and literature reached extraordinary heights. Augustus transformed Rome from a city of brick into a city of marble. Augustus was followed by a series of emperors ranging from the brilliant to the genuinely insane. Tiberius withdrew to an island and ruled through terror. Caligula declared himself a god, appointed his horse as a senator, and was assassinated after just 4 years. Claudius proved surprisingly competent. Nero blamed Christians for burning Rome and launched brutal persecutions before dying by his own hand. Yet despite the madness at the top, the empire continued to function. Its administrative systems were so well designed by Augustus that incompetent emperors couldn't destroy them. The provinces were governed, the armies were paid, the roads were maintained. Rome was bigger than any single emperor's madness. Rome reached its greatest extent and finest governance under what historians call the five good emperors: Nerva, Trajan, Hadrian, Antoninus Pius, and Marcus Aurelius, who ruled from 96 to 180 AD. Trajan pushed Roman borders to their maximum, conquering Dacia, modern Romania, and briefly reaching Mesopotamia. Hadrian built his famous wall across northern Britain to keep Scottish tribes out and consolidated Rome's borders. Marcus Aurelius was a philosopher king who wrote his meditations while commanding armies on the frontier. The philosopher Gibbon called this period the time in human history when the condition of the human race was most happy and prosperous. Rome would never be this strong again. After Marcus Aurelius died in 18 AD, Rome began its long, painful decline. His son Commodus was a narcissistic incompetent who believed himself to be Hercules reincarnated. After his assassination, Rome entered the crisis of the 3rd century, when 50 years saw 26 emperors, most of whom were assassinated by their own soldiers. The empire nearly shattered into pieces. Plagues swept through the population. The economy collapsed. Barbarian tribes pushed through the frontiers. Rome somehow survived this catastrophic half-century, largely through the efforts of remarkable soldier emperors who stabilized the situation temporarily. But the damage was profound and permanent. The Rome that emerged from the 3rd century crisis was fundamentally weaker than the Rome that had entered it. The Emperor Diocletian stabilized Rome by splitting it into eastern and western halves governed separately. Then Constantine emerged victorious from another civil war in 3112 AD after claiming he saw a Christian cross in the sky before the decisive Battle of Milvian Bridge. He made Christianity the favored religion of the empire, ending centuries of persecution. His decision to move the capital to Constantinople, modern Istanbul, in 330 AD was equally momentous. The new eastern capital was better positioned strategically, economically, and geographically. But it meant Rome itself, the eternal city, was no longer the center of power. The western half of the empire was being quietly abandoned to its fate. In the late 4th century, a terrifying new force appeared on Rome's eastern frontier: the Huns, nomadic warriors from Central Asia whose ferocity was unprecedented. Fleeing the Huns, Germanic tribes like the Visigoths crossed the Danube into Roman territory in enormous numbers. Rome allowed them in but mistreated them so badly that they rebelled. At the Battle of Adrianople in 378 AD, the Visigoths annihilated a Roman army and killed the emperor himself. It was the beginning of the end. Attila the Hun then terrorized the Western Empire in the 440s and 450s. In 410 AD, the Visigoths did something that had not happened in 800 years. They sacked the city of Rome itself. The Western Roman Empire spent its final decades as a shadow of its former self. Real power was held by barbarian military commanders who kept a series of puppet emperors on the throne. In 476 AD, a barbarian general named Odoacer simply deposed the last Western emperor, a teenage boy named Romulus Augustulus. He didn't bother installing another puppet. He sent the imperial insignia to Constantinople and declared himself king of Italy. Most people at the time barely noticed. The empire had already been dead in practice for decades, but historians mark 476 AD as the official fall of the Western Roman Empire. 1,000 years after its legendary founding, the Eternal City had fallen. But Rome didn't completely die in 476 AD. The Eastern Roman Empire, which we call the Byzantine Empire, survived for another 1,000 years. Based in Constantinople, it preserved Roman law, Roman culture, and Roman identity, while the western half crumbled. The great Emperor Justinian even reconquered parts of the Western Empire in the 6th century and codified Roman law into the Justinian Code, which forms the foundation of legal systems across Europe and the Americas today. The Byzantine Empire finally ended in 1453 AD, when Ottoman Turkish forces, under Sultan Mehmed II, captured Constantinople. The last Roman emperor died defending his city walls. Rome's final chapter was both magnificent and tragic. Rome fell, but Rome never truly disappeared. Every day, without realizing it, you live in a Roman world. The legal systems of Europe, North America, and Latin America are built on Roman foundations. The calendar you use was created by Julius Caesar. The language you speak contains thousands of Roman Latin words. The roads you drive on follow routes that Roman engineers first surveyed. The Christian church that 2 billion people follow was organized and spread throughout the world through the Roman Empire. Democracy, representative government, and civic virtue all trace their intellectual heritage back to Roman republican ideals. Rome didn't just build an empire. Rome built the world we live in today. From a small village of shepherds in 753 BC to the master of the known world, from the Punic Wars to the Pax Romana, from Julius Caesar to Constantine, from the fall of the West to the survival of the East, Rome's story is the greatest story in human history. It contains everything: war and peace, genius and madness, heroism and betrayal, democracy and tyranny, rise and fall and resurrection. Over the next 15 videos, we will explore every chapter of this extraordinary story in detail. Every battle, every emperor, every turning point. This is the series that covers it all.